A man walks down a dusty road in Cambodia. His feet are bare. His clothes are torn rags. His eyes stare at nothing. He cannot say his own name. This man is Ethan Miller. 6 years ago, he went into the jungle with 4 friends. They were looking for adventure. They never came back. Now, Ethan has returned, but he is broken. His body is covered in scars. His mind is shattered, and he carries a terrible secret about what happened in the jungle. This is the story of 5 people who disappeared, and the horror that one man lived through in the deepest, darkest parts of Cambodia. In 2017, 5 young people made a plan. They wanted to find something amazing in the jungles of Cambodia. They had heard stories about an old temple hidden deep in the forest, a temple that no one had seen for hundreds of years. The group was led by David Chen. He was 28 years old and had been a soldier. He knew how to survive in the wilderness. He was tough and smart. The others trusted him to keep them safe. Sarah Kim was 26 years old and worked as a nurse. She knew about medicine and first aid. She packed supplies to treat snake bites and tropical diseases. She was careful and prepared for everything. Mike Torres was 25 years old and loved technology. He brought GPS devices, satellite phones, and cameras. He had backup batteries for everything. He was the one who would keep them connected to the outside world. Lisa Wang was 27 years old and studied history. She had researched the lost temple for months. She knew the old stories and legends. Finding this temple was her dream. Ethan Miller was 24 years old and made documentary films. His job was to record their entire journey. He wanted to capture their moment of discovery. His cameras would show the world what they found. They spent months getting ready. They bought the best equipment they could afford. They studied maps and talked to experts. They had water filters, food for 3 weeks, emergency flares, and satellite phones with extra batteries. They were not foolish tourists. They were a well-prepared team with a solid plan. The team flew to Cambodia in March 2017. They hired a local guide to take them to the edge of the jungle. From there, they would walk about 50 miles through the forest to find the temple. The jungle was thick and hot. Vines hung from tall trees like curtains. The air was so humid it was hard to breathe. Mosquitoes swarmed around them constantly. But they were excited. This was the adventure they had dreamed about. For the first 3 days, everything went well. They sent messages back to their families every day. Day 1 complete, making good progress. The jungle is incredible. Day 2, found some interesting ruins. Not the main temple yet, but we're getting close. Day 3, weather is hot, but we're staying healthy. Should reach the target area tomorrow. On the 4th day, they sent their last message. Signal getting weak. Going into a valley area. We'll contact you when we reach higher ground in 2 days. Don't worry about us. That was the last anyone heard from the 5 adventurers. When 3 days passed without contact, the families started to worry. When a week passed, they called for help. The Cambodian government organized a massive search operation. Helicopters flew over the jungle for days. Search teams with machetes cut paths through the thick forest. Volunteers came from around the world to help look for the missing team. But the jungle was vast and dangerous. From the air, nothing could be seen except green treetops stretching to the horizon. On the ground, every step was a battle against thorns, mud, and insects. After 2 weeks of searching, one team made a discovery. They found the group's last campsite about 15 miles from where their final message was sent. The camp was eerie and disturbing. The tents were still standing perfectly. A cold campfire sat in the center. Scattered dishes and cups lay on the ground. Sleeping bags were inside the tents, but they were empty. Personal belongings were everywhere. Clothes, books, toothbrushes, and medicines. It looked like the 5 people had just stepped away for a few minutes and planned to come right back. But the strangest thing was what was missing. All the valuable survival equipment was gone. Backpacks, satellite phones, GPS devices, weapons, first aid supplies, and most of the food had vanished along with the 5 people. There were no signs of a fight, no blood, no torn clothing, no animal tracks. The 5 adventurers had simply disappeared without a trace. The investigators tried to figure out what had happened. They came up with several theories, but none of them made sense. Maybe the group got lost. But David was too experienced to make that kind of mistake. And they wouldn't have left camp with all their equipment. Maybe they were attacked by bandits. But there were no criminal groups operating in that area. And why would criminals take 5 foreigners prisoner? That would bring too much attention. Maybe wild animals attacked them. But a tiger or leopard would have left blood and torn clothing. The campsite was too clean. The search continued for another month. Helicopters covered hundreds of square miles. Ground teams explored every trail they could find. But the 5 people seemed to have vanished into thin air. Finally, the official search was called off. The case was declared an unsolved disappearance. The 5 adventurers were presumed dead. Their families held memorial services and tried to move on with their lives. The jungle kept its secrets. Time passed slowly. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. The families never stopped hoping, but they began to accept that their loved ones were gone forever. Then, in March 2023, exactly 6 years after the disappearance, something impossible happened. Cambodian police found a strange man walking along a busy highway near the capital city. He was barefoot and wearing clothes that were falling apart. His skin was dark from the sun and covered in old scars. His hair was long and matted. His beard was thick and wild. The man did not respond when police spoke to him. He made no sounds at all. His eyes were empty and distant. He stared straight ahead, as if he couldn't see anything around him. The police thought he was just another homeless person or someone with mental illness. They took him to the nearest hospital for treatment. At the hospital, doctors cleaned him up and gave him food and water. He was severely malnourished and dehydrated. His body was covered in scars from cuts and burns. He had infections and diseases common in people who had lived in the jungle for years. But the man still could not speak. He did not react to his own reflection in a mirror. He did not respond to any language the doctors tried. He just sat quietly and stared at nothing. Dr. Peng Sovan was a young doctor working at the hospital. He was interested in unsolved mysteries and often read about missing person cases in his spare time. When Dr. Sovan saw the silent man, something about his face seemed familiar. The man was thin and scarred, but his basic features reminded the doctor of someone he had seen before. Dr. Sovan spent hours searching through old missing person reports. He looked at hundreds of photographs from the past 10 years. Finally, he found what he was looking for. It was a picture of Ethan Miller, the young filmmaker who had disappeared in the jungle 6 years earlier. Even under the dirt and scars and wild hair, the resemblance was clear. To confirm his suspicion, Dr. Sovan ordered a DNA test. Samples were sent to an international laboratory. The results came back 2 weeks later. It was a perfect match. The silent, broken man in the hospital was Ethan Miller. He had somehow survived 6 years in the jungle and found his way back to civilization. But his return only created more questions. Where had he been? What had happened to his 4 companions? And why couldn't he speak or remember anything? Dr. Sovan called in specialists to examine Ethan more carefully. What they found painted a horrifying picture of what he had endured. Ethan's body was a map of suffering. Long scars covered his back, arms, and legs. Medical experts determined that the scars had been made by a stick or whip over many years. Some scars were very old, others were more recent. Ring-shaped marks around his wrists and ankles showed that he had been tied up or chained for long periods. His joints were worn down like those of a very old person. This suggested he had walked long distances over rough ground or been forced to do hard physical labor. Tests showed that Ethan had not eaten modern food in years. His diet had consisted of plants, roots, and raw meat. He had not used soap, shampoo, or toothpaste in 6 years. He had been completely cut off from civilization. Most disturbing was his mental condition. Ethan had severe memory loss. He did not remember who he was. He did not recognize his own name. He did not understand any human language. All attempts to communicate with him failed. At night, nurses heard him making strange sounds. They were not human words, but clicks and grunts that sounded more like animal noises than speech. When shown photographs of his family and the other missing team members, Ethan looked at them without any recognition. It was as if he was seeing the pictures for the first time. He was alive, but the person he had once been was gone. Psychologists tried many different ways to help Ethan remember his past. Regular talking therapy was useless because he could not understand or speak any language. They tried art therapy, giving him paper and pencils. For weeks, Ethan ignored the art supplies completely. Then, one day, he picked up a piece of charcoal and began to draw. At first, his drawings were just random lines and scribbles, but gradually, day after day, a pattern began to emerge. Ethan was drawing the same thing over and over again. It was a map, crude and simple, like a child's drawing, but definitely a map. It showed a river that split into 2 branches. There was a mountain with a distinctive peaked shape. There were clusters of dots that looked like trees or rocks. In the center of every map, Ethan always drew the same thing, a small cross. The investigators took the drawings very seriously. They compared Ethan's maps to satellite photographs of the jungle where the team had disappeared. It was difficult work, trying to match a simple drawing to thousands of square miles of forest. But finally, they found it. In one of the most remote and inaccessible areas of the jungle, the terrain exactly matched Ethan's drawing. There was the same river with 2 branches. There was the same peaked mountain. It was an isolated valley surrounded by steep cliffs. During the original search, this area had been marked as too dangerous to explore. The search teams had gone around it instead of through it. Now the investigators had a specific target. But what did the cross in the center of Ethan's map represent? Was it where he had been held prisoner? Or was it where his friends were buried? The Cambodian government organized a new expedition to the valley, shown in Ethan's drawings. This time, it was not a rescue mission, but a criminal investigation. The team included special police officers, a forensic investigator, a doctor, and a local guide who knew the jungle better than anyone. They were armed and prepared for anything. No one knew what they would find in the valley. Were the other team members still alive? If they had been taken prisoner, who had captured them? Was it a criminal gang, an isolated tribe, or something else? The expedition also brought Ethan with them, but he stayed at a safe base camp outside the valley. The investigators hoped that being near the location might trigger some memories. When Ethan was shown a map of where the team was going, his reaction was extreme. He began breathing heavily, and his eyes filled with terror. He backed away from the map, then suddenly started hitting his head against the wall while making those same animal-like clicking sounds. The doctors had to give him strong medicine to calm him down. It was the strongest reaction he had shown since arriving at the hospital. His body remembered the terror of that place, even though his mind could not. The expedition team reached the valley after 3 days of difficult hiking. The entrance was a narrow crack between rocks that was almost hidden by vines and fallen trees. As soon as they entered the valley, the world changed. The loud sounds of the jungle became quiet. There was an oppressive silence broken only by the wind in strange trees and the distant sound of water. The local guide looked nervous and kept glancing around. He told the team leader that his people had always avoided this valley. They called it the place where spirits go silent. The team moved forward, carefully with their weapons ready. Soon they reached the river from Ethan's drawing. The water was dark and still. Following the riverbank, they began to see signs that someone had been living in the valley. There were notches cut into tree trunks. Primitive traps made of sharpened bamboo sticks were hidden between the trees. Someone had been here, and they had not wanted visitors. After several hours of walking, the team reached a clearing. What they saw made them stop in shock. In the middle of the clearing stood several crude huts built from branches, mud, and palm leaves. In the center was a cold fire pit surrounded by stones. The settlement looked abandoned, but it had clearly been lived in recently. The police officers spread out and began searching the buildings. In one hut, they found their first piece of evidence. Leaning against the wall was a plastic container lid that matched the type used by the missing expedition. In another hut, they found a piece of bright blue fabric that had been used to patch a hole in the roof. It was clearly from a modern backpack. A bent metal spoon lay nearby, blackened by fire. These were definitely belongings from Ethan's group. The missing team had been here. But where were the people? The investigator looked again at Ethan's drawing. The cross was not marked at the settlement, but slightly to one side, at the base of a cliff. The team headed in that direction. They found the place easily. At the base of the cliff, arranged in a neat circle, were 4 small mounds of earth. Each mound was decorated with river stones arranged in careful patterns. 4 graves. The investigator ordered his team to carefully dig up the graves. In the first grave, they found human remains along with a brass compass on a leather strap. This compass had belonged to David Chen, the expedition leader. In the second grave, they found bones and a small silver pendant in the shape of a crescent moon. Lisa Wang's father had given her this pendant before she left for Cambodia. The third and fourth graves contained the remains of Sarah Kim and Mike Torres. Personal belongings in each grave confirmed their identities. All 4 of Ethan's companions were here. Their journey had ended in this remote valley, far from home and family. A forensic expert examined the remains. He found no signs of violent death, no bullet wounds or broken bones from beatings, but the condition of the skeletons told a different story. The 4 people had died slowly over several years. They showed signs of malnutrition, disease, and extreme physical stress. They had not been murdered quickly. They had died a long, painful death. But who had buried them so carefully? And why had Ethan survived when the others had died? While the forensic team worked on the graves, the local guide noticed something else. On the smooth surface of the cliff, just above head height, there were faint scratch marks. The marks led to thick bushes growing at the base of the mountain. Hidden behind the vegetation was a narrow entrance to a cave. The police officers turned on their flashlights and entered the cave. It was shallow, but clearly had been lived in for a long time. In one corner was a bed made of animal skins and dried leaves. The walls were covered with the same strange scratch marks they had seen outside, and in the deepest, darkest corner of the cave sat a man. He was old, with long gray hair and a wild beard. He wore clothes made from animal skins. He sat crouched with his arms around his knees, staring at the flashlight beams with animal-like curiosity. When one of the officers shouted at him in Cambodian, the man did not respond. He just stared. Then he made a soft clicking sound, exactly like the sounds Ethan made in the hospital. The man in the cave was not a member of some unknown tribe. Looking at his features, he was clearly Cambodian. He appeared to be in his 50s or 60s, though it was hard to tell his exact age. The investigators realized what had happened. This man was probably a former soldier or civilian who had fled into the jungle decades ago, perhaps during the war years of the 1970s. He had lived alone in this valley for so long that he had lost his ability to communicate normally. He was the master of this isolated valley. And 6 years ago, 5 foreign strangers had stumbled into his world. Ethan's group had probably gotten lost when their equipment failed. Exhausted and desperate, they had found their way into the valley. They were too weak to fight or escape. The old man was not evil, but he was completely insane from decades of isolation. For him, the 5 visitors were not prisoners, but companions. His own little tribe. He did not know how to treat people properly. He kept them like animals. He fed them what he ate himself: roots, raw meat, and insects. He taught them his language of clicks and animal sounds. When they disobeyed or tried to escape, he punished them like someone might punish a disobedient dog. This explained the scars on Ethan's body. 4 of the team members could not survive this treatment. Their bodies, used to modern life, could not handle the diseases, malnutrition, and constant stress. They died one by one over several years. The old man buried them as best he knew how. Ethan survived because he was the youngest and strongest. But 6 years of this life had destroyed his mind. He forgot how to be human and learned to be an animal living in a cave. His escape was probably accidental. Maybe the old man became sick or weak. Maybe Ethan followed some instinct and walked out of the valley. By pure luck, he eventually reached a road where someone found him. The old man did not resist when the police led him out of the cave. He was taken to the capital city for questioning and trial, but it was impossible to put him on trial. Psychiatrists determined that he was completely insane. His mind had been destroyed by decades of total isolation. He could not understand what he had done wrong. In his damaged mind, he had been caring for his family. The old man was placed in a secure psychiatric hospital. He would spend the rest of his life there, unable to harm anyone else. The case of the missing expedition was officially closed. The remains of David, Sarah, Mike, and Lisa were returned to their families for proper burial. News of the discovery made headlines around the world, but the full horror of what had happened was kept secret to protect the families and prevent copycat crimes. Ethan never recovered his memory or his ability to speak. The damage to his mind was too severe to repair. He was transferred to a specialized care facility where he could be looked after properly. He was calm and obedient in his new home. He learned to eat normal food and use a bathroom, but his eyes remained empty and distant. He showed no recognition of his family when they visited. Sometimes, sitting by a window and looking at trees, Ethan would make those soft clicking sounds he had learned in the valley. The staff understood that this was his way of communicating, even though no one else could understand what he was trying to say. His family visited regularly, hoping for some sign that he remembered them. But Ethan looked at them the same way he looked at strangers. The person he had once been was gone forever. The young filmmaker who had dreamed of capturing an amazing discovery had become a living ghost. His body had returned to civilization, but his mind remained trapped in that silent valley. David Chen's parents never got over the loss of their son. They had been so proud of his military service and his adventurous spirit. Learning that he had died slowly in a jungle cave was almost unbearable. Sarah Kim's mother quit her job to take care of Ethan when he was released from the hospital. She felt that caring for the sole survivor was a way to honor her daughter's memory. Sarah had always helped people, and now her mother was helping the one person Sarah could not save. Mike Torres's brother became an advocate for better safety protocols in adventure tourism. He worked to prevent other families from experiencing the same tragedy. Lisa Wang's father blamed himself for encouraging his daughter's interest in history and exploration. He donated money to build a library in Cambodia, hoping to create something positive from his daughter's death. All the families struggled with the same question. Should they be grateful that Ethan had survived, or was his condition so tragic that death might have been kinder? The Cambodian government has classified the valley as a restricted area. No tourists or researchers are allowed to enter. The location is kept secret to prevent curiosity seekers from attempting to visit. The huts where the team was held have been torn down. The graves have been filled in and marked with a simple stone memorial. The cave where the old man lived has been sealed shut, but local people still avoid the area. They say the valley is cursed. Hunters report strange sounds coming from the cliffs at night. Some claim to see lights moving in the darkness where no lights should be. The guide who led the rescue expedition refuses to talk about what he saw there. He tells people that some places are better left alone. What really happened in that valley during those 6 years will never be fully known. Ethan cannot tell his story, and the old man is too insane to give reliable answers. But the physical evidence tells enough of the story. 5 young people with dreams of adventure became prisoners in a nightmare that lasted for years. 4 of them died slowly and painfully, far from home. 1 survived, but lost everything that made him human. The old man was both victim and victimizer. His own mind had been destroyed by isolation and trauma. When he encountered the 5 explorers, he did what his damaged brain thought was caring for them. But his idea of care was a form of torture. There were no real villains in this story, only victims. The jungle, the isolation, and the fragility of human sanity had conspired to create a tragedy that no one could have prevented. The story of the lost expedition became a cautionary tale in the adventure travel community. It highlighted the dangers of exploring remote areas without proper backup plans and communication protocols. New safety requirements were established for expedition teams. Regular check-ins became mandatory. Emergency beacons were required to have longer battery life and better coverage. But some experts argued that no amount of preparation could have prevented this particular tragedy. When equipment fails and people get lost in truly remote areas, they become vulnerable to circumstances beyond their control. The jungle is indifferent to human plans and preparations. It follows its own rules, and those rules do not include mercy for lost travelers. Today, Ethan Miller lives quietly in his care facility. He's now 30 years old, though his experiences have aged him in ways that don't show on a calendar. He has a routine that brings him comfort. He wakes at dawn and sits by his window until breakfast. He eats slowly and carefully, never taking food for granted. He spends his afternoons in the facility's garden, touching plants and listening to birds. Staff members have learned to recognize his different clicking sounds. Some clicks mean he is hungry. Others mean he is tired or wants to go outside. He has created his own simple language, but it is a language only he understands. Sometimes visitors come to see him. researchers studying trauma and memory loss, journalists writing about the expedition, family members who still hope for a miracle recovery. Ethan treats all visitors the same. He looks at them with mild curiosity, makes a few soft clicking sounds, then returns his attention to whatever activity was interrupted. He shows no signs of recognizing anyone or remembering anything from his life before the valley. The 6 years in captivity did not just damage his mind, they erased it completely. One question remains unanswered. How did Ethan escape from the valley? The old man was captured easily and showed no signs of injury or illness that would have prevented him from keeping his prisoner. The valley is surrounded by steep cliffs and has only one narrow entrance. Ethan had been held there successfully for 6 years. What changed? What allowed him to finally get away? Some investigators believe the old man simply grew careless as he aged. Others think Ethan retained enough survival instinct to recognize an opportunity when the old man was distracted or sleeping. But there is another possibility, one that the official reports do not mention. Local people tell stories about the valley that go back generations. They say it is a place where the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead becomes thin. They believe that spirits can enter and leave the valley freely, but living people cannot. According to these stories, Ethan was only able to escape because he was no longer fully alive. 6 years of torture and isolation had killed the person he used to be. What emerged from the valley was not Ethan Miller, but something else wearing his body. This explanation is dismissed by scientists and investigators, but it is the one that makes sense to the people who have lived near the valley for generations. They believe that the real Ethan Miller died in that cave years ago. What returned to civilization was just a shell, an empty vessel that once contained a human soul. On a warm afternoon in Cambodia, a man sits in a garden chair under a mango tree. He is watching ants carry crumbs across the ground. He makes soft clicking sounds to himself, as if commenting on what he sees. This man has no name that he remembers. The staff call him Ethan, but he does not respond to it any more than he would respond to any other sound. To him, all human speech is just noise. He does not know that he once had dreams of becoming a famous filmmaker. He does not remember the friends who died alongside him in a remote valley. He does not understand that people around the world know his story. He exists in a permanent present, without past or future. Each moment is complete in itself. He is hungry, so he eats. He is tired, so he sleeps. He is curious about the ants, so he watches them. In some ways, this simple existence might be considered peaceful. He has no worries, no regrets, no fears about tomorrow. He is cared for by kind people in a safe place. But the price of this peace was everything that made him human. His memories, his personality, his ability to love and be loved. All of it was stripped away in that valley where spirits go silent. Sometimes, late at night, the staff hear him making different sounds, not the gentle clicks of his daytime communication, but longer, more complex patterns. These sounds seem to carry emotion, sadness, longing, perhaps even a kind of grief. It is possible that in these moments, some deep part of his original self is trying to surface. Some fragment of Ethan Miller struggling to emerge from the silence that has consumed him. But if this is true, the effort always fails. By morning, he is back to his simple routine of watching, eating, and making soft animal sounds that no one else can understand. The jungle took 5 young people and returned 1 broken shell. It kept their dreams, their hopes, their futures, and their love for each other. In exchange, it gave back only silence. And in that silence, the truth of what happened in the valley remains hidden. Perhaps that is for the best. Some stories are too terrible to be told completely. The quiet man under the mango tree holds the secrets of those 6 missing years, but he will never share them. He cannot share them. He is the sole witness to a horror that destroyed 5 lives and broke the hearts of the families who loved them. And he will carry that burden in silence until the day he dies. The valley where spirits go silent claimed its victims completely. It took their voices, their memories, and their humanity. What it left behind was just enough to remind the world that some places should never be explored, some mysteries should never be solved. In the end, perhaps the greatest tragedy is not that 4 people died in that remote valley. The greatest tragedy is that one person survived, only to discover that survival and salvation are not the same thing. Ethan Miller returned from the dead, but he did not return to life. He exists in the space between, forever trapped in the silence that the jungle imposed upon him. And in his empty eyes, if you know how to look, you can still see the echo of the horror that no human mind should ever have to contain.